but it does look like I am live on my personal feed. So, all right, I'm just gonna go with it. All right, so Sound of Freedom. Have you watched Sound of Freedom? Hey, Britt, I just saw you jump on. Can you tell me if you can hear me? And obviously, I think you can see me, but can you hear me? Can you give me 2 thumbs up if you can hear me, okay? That would be super helpful before I continue talking. Okay, cool. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so this is a must watch. And the reason I wanted to come on live is because I want to give you a different perspective than just going to the movie theater. So I'm going to share a little bit of my own personal journey, my own personal just experience in the realm of anti-trafficking efforts. So I had a life-changing experience. I'm going to probably skip over some of the details so I don't have you here all night long. But this began for me in 2011. It was summer of 2011 when the Lord revealed this to me. And let me preface this by saying that I had a very traumatic upbringing as a child. I've had 3 different families. And the first 2 families was during, ages 0 to 18. And so I spent the first close to 9 years with the first family, and then 9 years going on 10 with the second family. In the midst of all of that, I endured a lot of abuse, every kind of abuse. Use your imagination. Or don't. I just want to be very careful with my language in case there's children around you. My son is in the room, and so I want to be very mindful of what language I use. Now he's distracted, but nonetheless. So I experienced every kind of abuse. I was also abducted, actually on my 9th birthday, or I can't remember if it was the exact day of my birthday, if it was the day before, the day after, but it was right around my 9th birthday. And so when I went to Cambodia, so let me fast forward in time. When I went to Cambodia, I was faced with a reality that really shook me to the core. It was a very life-changing mission trip, which, again, that journey for me, the exposure to human trafficking began in 2011. The Lord began to just show me some things, reveal some things. I'll skip over the details simply because it'll take me too long to share the fullness of the story. However, I remember after I stumbled upon this little face, it was a card with a face at an event. I picked it up, tucked it away, put it in a desk drawer. I was working from my house. My husband would go on his computer every morning and he would just kind of scan the news and just be aware of what's going on so that way he could include whatever's going on in his prayer time, right? Well, he saw an article, in fact, I believe it was on CNN, of all places, and it was an interview with Christine Kane, which if you don't know who Christine Kane, she's amazing. She's an incredible human being. She runs the organization, the A21, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting what she runs? Is it the A21 campaign? Yes, the A21 campaign, I believe is what it's called. Yep, the A21 campaign. I'm looking it up for you right now. And anyways, so it was an interview with her talking about her story and how she came to be exposed to the cruel realities of human trafficking. And as I read this article, this is what happened. Tom had gone on like usual every morning, kind of scanned the news. He comes across this article, he reads this article, and then he clicks share to social media. Well, I was logged in to Facebook. He didn't realize that. He just clicked share, and then that's it. He moved on. He went to work. Well, then I came into our office. I, log into the computer. I'm about to get started with my workday. And the screen that is open is my Facebook page. And I see the title, or I see the words, right? SEX, trafficking, on my Facebook. And the first thing I saw was the first 3-letter word. And I was like, I thought somebody had hacked my account, had been posting, like perverse stuff on my account. So I nearly deleted it. I literally didn't even have time to think, to look at the fullness of what had been posted. I just saw that one word and I went to click delete, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, don't delete it, read it. And I was a little bit startled, like, excuse me? Ooh, say what? I clicked on the link, very nervously. Like, I had no idea what in the world I was doing. I clicked on it, it takes me to the article. I read the article and I was just shaken. Right now, since then I've read her book. I've heard her speak multiple times, and so that was kind of one of the first things that happened in a whole sequence of events that began to unfold over the course of 2011. So, anyways, now I end up at this event. I pick up this little card. It was this little face just staring at me, and it said, "Rescue her." And so I put it away in this drawer. A few days later, I was working again. I'm minding my own business. Like, I was in HR. So I'm like working on payroll or working on benefits, who knows, something HR related. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I feel this heavy burden that I cannot even begin to describe. It was intercession, but it was travail. And bam, it brought me to my knees, and I was wailing and weeping, and utterances were just pouring out of me that I could not even explain, understand, like nothing. I was in this state of overcome by the grief that Holy Spirit was experiencing in that moment. Like, I felt his heart. I felt what he feels for these kids. And I apologize if I get emotional. Anyway, so that moment happens, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, I was just working. I was minding my own business. I wasn't even thinking about that. And bam, it just hit me out of nowhere. Well, anyways, in the midst of that moment, I scream and I just go, Lord, do something. Just do something. And of course, I wasn't aware of all the organizations that are out there. I didn't know anything about anything at this point. I only knew about Christine Kane and the A21 campaign. And the Lord says to me, it was literally like an audible voice. I don't think it was audible, but it sounded really audible. And he said, you do something. And it stopped me on my tracks. I kind of looked around like, is somebody in the room? This is before my son was born. Like, there was nobody in the house. And I kind of freaked out. I'm like, is somebody here? What do you mean? Me do something? What would I do? Right? And that's what many of you are thinking. What in the world would I do? Like, I'm just one person, right? And the statistics feel very overwhelming, right? To have some organizations will tell you that there's over 30 million people trapped in human trafficking. Other organizations will tell you it's 40 million. It's a lot of millions, you guys. And when you're looking at the number, it becomes very overwhelming, and you feel like you can't do anything. Like, what could one person do about 40 million people that are trapped in human trafficking? And the vast majority of those being trapped in sex trafficking. I'm being careful with my language. So you get it. However, when you stop to think about, okay, yeah, you're just one person, but if you stop to think about just the one little face. I had this one little face on a card. Stop to think about the one little face that you could be an advocate for, that you could speak up for. What do you mean? What could I do? There's a lot of ways that you can help, that you can get plugged in. And I know I'm going in a few different directions here. I'll come back to the story because this is important. But first of all, become informed. Become aware. As you become aware, you also begin to recognize signs of these things happening. And then you're able to call the authorities, okay? And I'm going to tell you a story about that. Start spreading awareness. Start sharing what you're learning. Sharing awareness is a big deal. There are still some people that don't know. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of people out there that don't know that this is happening, or they simply assume that this happens in some faraway land in third world countries. And what could they possibly do about that, right? No, this happens right here. It happens in your city. In your city, okay? I mean, I live in the Dallas Metroplex. It happens in Dallas all the time. But it happens here in Rockwall, in my little suburb of Rockwall, at the truck station. Happens there too, okay? So it looks different in different nations. And there's low end and then there's high end, you know? So there's different kinds of clients and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, it is happening in your own backyard. So you need to become aware. You need to become informed. You need to spread awareness of what is going on. You could also sow. You could make donations to the people that are in the front lines, that are literally rescuing people. And there's a lot of components. Different people play different roles. Again, I'll go back to the story. This will make sense in a little bit. So there's people that do the rescuing. There's people that do the awareness. There's people that do the rescuing. There's people that do the ministering to, like, after, post, you know, rescue, that help to bring healing, restoration, to provide. There's people that do the, what do you call it? Not technical training. What do you call it? Like, just, they teach them a trade, whether it's cooking, baking, sewing, like just all these different trades. And they equip them to go into society once they're whole, they're healthy, to have a job, to prosper, to flourish, to build a business, etc. So there's a lot of different pieces in all of this. You can sow into any of these organizations. Here locally in Dallas, the organization that I was very much plugged in with, and I volunteered with multiple times, I participated in their events and their fundraisers, was Rescue Her. And they're here locally in Dallas. So they're actually the organization that I went on a mission trip with back in 2012. So, okay, so this series, so back to the story, right? Oh, let me think, what else? So donate. You could also go on a mission trip. You could also literally go and physically minister to the girls in the rescue home. There are rescue homes that allow for that, that allow for people like me and you to come in and go and encourage and go and serve, go and teach them something, go and train them on something. You know, every organization is going to have their own set of policies and guidelines and procedures, so you'll get acquainted with that. But you can literally search like anti-trafficking organization or human trafficking organization in my city or whatever. You know, if you're near like a large metro area, you're going to have multiple options. So you can search that out and see, how can I serve? How can I get plugged in? Could I volunteer at their fundraiser? Could I serve at the whatever, you know, the rescue home? Could I be the lady passing out the toiletries at the motels in the evening, right? Etc. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get plugged in. So, okay, back to the story. So a bunch of things happened in 2011 that ultimately lead to me signing up for subscribing to an email list to Rescue Her. And funny enough, I subscribed June 2011, July 2011. Yeah, it was, yeah. It was like the very end of June, beginning of July, because I remember it was like 4th of July weekend, that time frame. And I never got an email. Like months went by. And all that I did during that time frame from July to December was educate myself, become aware, spread awareness. That's what I did. And it didn't consume my whole day, but it was something that I did as a part of getting the word out, as a part of being, you know, being a part of the solution. So then come December, it was close to New Year's, around that time, between Christmas and New Year's, I finally get an email. It kind of stunned me because I'd gone months since I subscribed and I had never received anything. And I get this email, and there was an invitation for people to apply to go to Cambodia on a mission trip to the red light district. And the mission trip was scheduled for March of 2012. My heart leaped inside of me, and I knew that I was called to go. I knew that this is something that I was supposed to say yes to. Kind of terrified me, not gonna lie, right? This was, I was 32, yeah. So anyways, so I applied. Of course, I talked to my husband and all that. He's like, yeah, you're supposed to go. So anyway, so I apply. The pastors that were leading this mission trip, they pastor a church and they lead this organization, Rescue Her. And they made an open invitation to people. However, there were going to be, not everybody was going to go, right? You could submit an application that didn't mean you got to go. They were going to pray over the applications. Obviously, they're going to review the information. They were going to pray over the applications and ask the Lord, who is supposed to be on this team? So then my husband and I were supposed to, all of a sudden, this other opportunity to go on a domestic mission trip came up on the same dates. And I told my husband, I said, I can't be in two places at one time. And he said, well, you know, if you're supposed to be in Cambodia, this will work itself out. And it did. It did. So then all of a sudden I get this email because I was conflicted. I'm like, but Lord, I felt like you said I'm supposed to go on this mission trip to Cambodia. How could you be telling me to go to this place domestically in a different state, but domestically to, you know, on a mission trip there on the same dates? That doesn't make sense. But as soon as I gave him my yes, I was like, okay, I surrender. I yield the agenda. I let go of control. You know, the moment I did that, I got another email that said, so sorry, we have to reschedule the mission trip. Now we're going in October 2012. Now, at this point, I've been selected, right? I've been chosen to be part of this mission team. So, October 2012. Oh man, there's so much that I could say. The last night that I'm here, I'm sleeping. Well, I'm trying to anyways. I'm packed up. I'm ready to go. That night, I was so tormented. Now, I learned a lot about spiritual warfare during this trip and leading up to the trip and during this trip. In fact, I nearly died, like in a literal sense on this trip. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just sharing my story. Here I am. I didn't die. I'm good. But the enemy tried to take me out. And so that whole night I was being tormented. It was a horrible, horrible night. And I asked my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not supposed to go, because fear came in, right? I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? I have not gotten 1 ounce of sleep. I'm being tormented. What is happening? And my husband's like, no, that actually means you're supposed to go, because there's clearly a lot of opposition. There's a reason the enemy doesn't want you to go. So he called the pastors, which we didn't know yet. And he just made sure that they were going to be able to, like, hey, like, do you understand spiritual warfare? Do you know how to handle situations like this? If my wife happens to have another night of tormenting, you know, like this, like, do you know what to do? Long story short was yes. So it takes me to the airport, and there were 4. Okay, so the pastors that were leading it, and like maybe 2 other gals and myself that met at the Dallas airport for the first time. And then we met several other 4 perfect strangers once we reached Cambodia. And so none of us knew each other. None of us. The only people that knew each other were obviously the pastors, the couple, they're married. And then one of the people that I think was volunteering for them at the time. So 3 people knew each other. The rest of us did not. And so we met in Cambodia for the first time. We spent, I don't remember how long it was, 8 days, 9 days, I don't know, a while, okay? And we spent the beginning part of our trip, we stayed in the red light district. And by the way, I will circle back to the movie, okay? So I'll explain why I feel very strongly you need to watch this. So we stay in the red light district. When you're in a third world country, hotels are not made very well. Everything's very cheaply made. It's very crappy, and you hear through the walls. You hear everything through the walls. And our hotel was in the red light district. So we're going to the brothels. We're just kind of getting our feel for the land, right? And we're observing, we're watching. Really, it was a good training ground for us. And I believe at that particular point in time, Cambodia had made it illegal to have sex rooms at the brothels. However, what you could do is you could go pay for a girl and you would take her to the nearby hotel. And they're supposed to have girls that are, whatever it was, 16 or over, because you couldn't work at a bar/brothel, right? AKA brothel, unless you were whatever the age was, 16 or 18. But clearly there were girls in there that were younger. And you just knew it. You could just tell. And in fact, we were able to give a lead to the International Justice, what is it called? IJM, International Justice Ministry. So we were able to, our team was able to capture some undercover photos, submit a lead, and help them get started with that investigation to help that girl. So anyways, we stayed at this hotel. I saw the pimps and the madams not only walking up and down the streets with their paid, girls that they just paid for, but also watching these people, men and women, it wasn't just men, going up and down the elevator with underage girls. and you could hear a lot through the walls. So eventually we moved on to a different location, but we did stay in the red light district for the majority of our time, and we got to visit with a lot of different ministries. We got to go to the office of the International Justice Ministry, and they walked us through a case, like what happens when, you know, the different pieces that come together. Like, okay, most of the law enforcement is very corrupt, but they learn to build relationships with those that are trusted. Right, so they have trusted individuals within law enforcement. But in a third world country, they're extremely poor, which is one of the reasons that they're so corrupt. But anyways, so they have relationships with certain people, trusted individuals in law enforcement. But the IJM ministry is responsible for collecting the data, because they don't have the finances, they don't have the resources. Law enforcement doesn't have the finances or the resources to do their jobs properly. So people funding, right? Like if you're giving a donation to the International Justice Ministry, they're going to use that money to investigate cases and to rescue these girls, right? And so, and of course, there's boys as well. But what I saw, I didn't see. That's not true. I think I saw one male, but mostly it was women and primarily girls. And in Cambodia, when you have a daughter, you hit the jackpot and you can sell her. They typically sell them at the age of 5. And they get sold up to 40 times a day. Just wrap your mind around that. A little girl being sold 40 times a day. That's up to, on average. You know, of course, different places, different scenarios. Nonetheless, whatever, if it's 7 times a day, 40 times a day, it doesn't matter. These girls are being robbed of their soul, of their innocence, of everything. They're just so much. And so anyways, IJM kind of walked us through, okay, so we got these relationships with these trusted law enforcement people with the donations that we receive. When we get a lead, we begin performing an investigation. Once we have a really tight case that we feel really good about, then we go and talk to our law enforcement partners, because we can't have a weak case. A lot of these girls will be terrified to speak up. They were not going to say anything because they're going to hurt their families, or they're going to get killed, or, you know, they're going to get beaten or whatever. So we have to have a really secure, like we are pretty darn sure, 99% to 100% sure that we have a case here to properly rescue them and put the pimps away. And so they walked us through that process and what happens, and then the evaluations that they do and determine the emotional state, the mental state of the girls. And there's like a 72-hour window, maybe it was 48 to 72-hour window that they have to get information out of the girls, or it's not going to happen. And then if the girls feel like, okay, like if they're able to reassure the girls, we got this, you're safe, you're not going back there, they're not going to hurt you, we have a secure case, and they feel safe sharing, that's, you know, the evaluations happen, then they determine, okay, do they need to go to counseling, do they need to go, like, they kind of determine their placement and the rescue home, etc. So there's a lot of things that happen. So now you transition into like the rescue home, for instance, right? So if they determine, okay, these girls need to go to a rescue home, which I spent quite a bit of time at with our team. And in fact, when we went to the rescue home, part of what they asked us not to do ahead of time is don't ask for their stories. That's very traumatic for them. The last thing they need to do is rehash everything they've been through. You're coming here to love them. You're coming here to encourage them. And so we did fun activities. We taught them things that were helpful. I taught them how to make braided headbands, because then that's something that they can turn around and make lots of and sell, right? And make some money, and speak life into them, encourage them, speak the word of God over them. And so it was a really powerful time. But I remember one particular day at the rescue home, the girls ranged in ages, and once they hit 18, then they can either help them transition, because now they finish schooling, because they also, you know, educate them, make sure that they go to school, or that, you know, sometimes they do it in-house. But nonetheless, by the time they hit 18, there's like, okay, are we going to help you transition, go into like a trade school? Or like, their goal is to integrate them back into society. And if possible, they really want to integrate them back into the family unit if that's a healthy situation, not if they're just going to get sold again, right? So there's years of pouring into them and working with the families and working with these various different organizations to help the girls step back into society in a way that they can flourish and be healthy. And so some of them, though, they can't. Some of them have been so traumatized that they live in a separate environment within the rescue home, but there was like almost like, I don't know if it was a separate wing. I feel like it was a separate little housing area for the girls that had a lot of mental trouble from all of the trauma. And anyways, so there's just varying degrees of, you know, of trauma and what they're going through and overcoming. The youngest girl at the time that I was there was 7 years old, but she had been there since she was 5. And I looked at her, and I don't know if I said this like whispered it to myself or if I said it internally, but I said, Lord, she's so little. She's so innocent. And he said to me, so are you. And I just remember thinking, oh, no. I don't have time to deal with that right now. I'm here for them. But I could relate, even though the circumstances were different. I wasn't being sold 40 times a day, right? Nonetheless, I had experienced a similar trauma, given that I had also been abused in that way for many years and had experienced abduction and verbal and physical abuse and all the things. So I could relate to a degree, right? And so anyways, that was an interesting moment of the Lord putting his finger on something. And my heart just connected to these girls. So then we went to these other organizations. We got to see like all the puzzle pieces. This one place we got to go see where they get trained in, they get to learn how to bake, they get to learn how to sew, they get to learn how to technology, right? They get to learn whatever it is, like these different skills based upon the things that they enjoy doing. And then there's businesses that hire them. Now, in their culture, in the atmosphere, if the patrons, like the guests, the people that come in to be served, whether it's, you know, it's a bakery. There was one place, there was a bakery, most delicious cupcakes in Cambodia. If they knew that the people serving them were trafficked survivors, they would shun them, you know. So they were like, word doesn't get out. These are girls that have been restored. They have been given life skills, and they are now working to make a living, and they have a safe place to work where they're going to be protected. And so I'm just sharing a full picture of every piece is needed. We need the people that are doing the investigations. We need the people that are doing the rescuing. We need the people that are housing the girls, the people that are counseling the girls, the people that are educating the girls, you know, the people that are teaching them life skills and trade skills and business skills. We need the people that are going to hire them and protect them. Like, you need all of those pieces working together, and one person can't do it all. So it was really cool to see this collaboration of multiple organizations doing their part to not only rescue, but to restore, to heal, and to help launch them into society again as healthy, flourishing, thriving individuals. And so anyway, so that was really cool. Really, really neat to see. Fast forward, our last day, we went to, so that was in Phnom Penh. So we spent, which is the capital of Cambodia, we spent all of our time in Phnom Penh until the final day and a half, I would say, day and a half, 2 days. we went to, oh my gosh, why am I blanking out? Oh, it was gorgeous. It was such a beautiful place. It was unreal. But I forgot the name of it for now. It may come back to me later. So we traveled to this other place. These were going to be like times of fun for now. It's like, okay, we're done with the ministry part. Now let's just go and enjoy. Let's go ride some four-wheelers and let's get up at sunrise and go ride some elephants and a fun time, right? Well, anyway, so that evening we get to that destination that I forgot the name of. And we go to market. We're going to go to dinner and we're going to go to market. And there's a guy in our team. So there's 9 of us. And one of the guys, this is a really kind of a cool story. He was a pastor for like 20 years. And then the Lord called him out from the 4 walls of the church to become like a Liam Neeson. If you ever watched the movie Taken, that's what he does. That's what this guy does. And primarily more of that high end, So he was with our team kind of disguising himself as, I'm just, doing these things with these people. But he was scouting out situations like in the movie Taken. And he was going to stay longer once we left and do what he does, right? So let Liam Neeson do his thing. I remember being at the market. And we were young, and one of my I'm trying to think, how many men did we have on the team? I think we were mostly women, and we just had 2 guys. Yeah, and this guy that I'm telling you about, he trains Navy SEALs. He himself, oddly enough, is not a Navy SEAL, but he trains Navy SEALs. And I thought, well, that's good enough for me. But we're at the market, and there's all kinds of guys with their eyes on us, and every now and then, I forgot his name, but I still see his face. He would pop his face out of nowhere and he'd say, like, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. So I'm like, good. I'm like, I know I'm safe. I'm good because you're here. But those men that were following us around, once we all left, I can't remember if we did market and then we did dinner. But whenever we left, or if it was the reverse, but when we left dinner, these guys were following us from behind and they started talking to our pastors. So the pastor was a couple, right? So the husband, they started talking to him and asking him if he wanted some girls, if he needed some pleasure. And our pastor starts speaking really loudly. No, I'm good. Don't need any of that. Thank you very much. And so then those guys are like, well, okay. Well, do you want some drugs? Like, we've got this, this, and this, and this. And the pastor again's like, hey, you guys, these guys are offering us XYZ. Does anybody need anything? Or are we good? We're like, we're good, thanks, we'll pass. Anyways, that was just a very interesting encounter. The next day, we were supposed to get up at sunrise, or actually before sunrise, and go and ride elephants to watch the sunrise. But something insane happened throughout the night where I was incredibly oppressed. I had this crazy sickness, all of a sudden, physically ill, and the pastors late at night, because one of our girls was a nurse, she went and got them. They came over, prayed for me. They just went back to bed. Within 5 minutes of them praying, the physical symptoms were broken. I was fine. All of that junk lifted. I was healed of whatever the physical ailment was, but then I could tell the difference because now I had this weighty thing oppressing me. It's really hard to describe unless you've experienced it. And I felt this demonic oppression. And that next day, I was not able to go ride the elephants. I became very ill, but not physically. It was weird. I did have some, I really honestly, I don't know how to describe it. I ended up in a hole in the wall clinic, 3 hours with an IV. They couldn't figure out what in the world was wrong with me. And my nurse friend was sitting across from me and we're looking at each other and we knew exactly what we were thinking, but we wouldn't say it out loud because there's power in our words. But I knew that I was dying. And I grabbed my phone, which was like a little portable paid cell phone. And I called my husband. I only had a few minutes left on, maybe like 3 minutes. And I called him to say goodbye. I wanted to let him know that I wasn't going to make it home because I was dying in Cambodia. And he said, no, you're not. I know the words that have been spoken over your life. You're coming home. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, so that's just a little side story because one of the things I wish I had known before I went is the power of intercession. I wish that I would have had intercessors praying for me. Not only that, I wish that I would have been prayed up leading up to that trip. I wish that when we stepped foot into the hotel in the red light district by, next to the brothels, that I would have prayed over the room. Like there's just so many things that in hindsight, I'm like, man, I wish I could have done this differently. But it was a learning experience. I learned so much. And my biggest takeaway, because I'm going to get to the movie here in a sec, was just seeing the power and the beauty of all these wonderful organizations working together to rescue, to heal, and restore these women of all ages, little girls to older girls, so on and so forth. And so when I walked away from that experience, however long it was, 8 days, 9 days, that's something that changes your life. You can't go into a red light district and go to the brothels and go to the rescue home and go to all these different ministries that I just explained to you, that I just described to you, and not be changed forever. Like how do you see that and just go back to life as normal? Like you can't, right? So I came home. I do remember telling the pastors, I'm like, I want to take that little girl home. Can I just take her home? This was a different little girl that I met in a village. And because I knew that she could very well end up being trafficked. Like the majority of the girls are going to end up trafficked. And she said, well, unfortunately, we can't take her. That's what we can't do that. That's what we do, is we stop people from taking girls. Anyways, it's kind of a funny note with that. But so come back and I'm just stirred. I'm like, what do I do? Like, what's my responsibility? So I spent the next few years organizing awareness events, walks for freedom, run for freedoms, where I would do like 5Ks. And anytime I did any of these types of events, I was raising funds to then go and sow into these organizations. So I sent money to rescue her. I sent money to the She Rescue Home in Cambodia. I sent funds to, I bought a billboard in Dallas off of 30, spreading awareness. And I believe for that billboard, I was making the connection between pornography and sex and sex trafficking, making sure my little guy is not paying attention. Because people also don't realize that if you or someone you know is engaging in pornography, where there is a demand, there's going to be, right, demand and supply, right? Is that how it goes? Maybe I'm saying that wrong. And there's a very clear connection between the two, okay? So anyways, that's another topic for another day. But let's just be very clear about that. If you are engaging in pornography, you are part of the problem. Get help, okay? I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be harsh. You can get help. Okay, so the movie, Sound of Freedom. When I hear people say, I don't know if I can watch that. I don't think I can watch that. Yes, you can. Put on your big girl panties and go watch it. The reason people don't want to watch, and I'm sure there's more than these reasons, but it's ignorance is bliss. I would rather not know. You know why? Because once you know, you have a responsibility for what you know. Once you see, you can't unsee what you've seen. I will say the movie is not graphic at all. You're not going to see anything. Okay? There's not going to be anything that you see that's going to traumatize you. You're not going to have any images to take back with you. The movie is very well made. Very, very well done. A lot of things are implied. And so you just have to go see it. It's a true story. Of course, there are people out there that are claiming it is not true. It is true. And little rabbit trail. Tim Ballard. This is a story based on Timothy Ballard. The reason I personally know about him is that, okay, so many of you know that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm building a business. I'm a natural health educator, so I do a lot of health coaching and health education, etc. But I also offer clean crafted products. So I partner with a brand. I'm a brand partner for an incredible organization called Herbal Alchemy. And we offer farm fresh, botanical, skincare, and whole food based nutritional. So what does that have to do with trafficking? Okay. Every purchase that someone makes, or anytime somebody shops with me, a portion of that purchase goes directly towards supporting Operation Underground Railroad. We fund 3 different ministries, 3 anti-trafficking ministries. And so Operation Underground Railroad, that's Tim Ballard's organization. That's what he does. So he used to be in law enforcement, right? And now he runs this anti-trafficking organization. And you have to watch the movie to understand his story, how he went from, working as an investigator and busting pimps and rescuing. Well, he started out by just kind of busting the pimps, and then he ends up going into rescuing the victims, right? So you watch the movie, even if just for that. Get to know Tim Ballard, and then you can decide if you want to support Operation Underground Railroad. Anyways, so that's how I found out about Tim Ballard 3 years ago when I first partnered with this brand that I, offer to my customers. And so back to the movie, it's Jim Caviezel that plays Tim Ballard, and it is an incredible story. These are kids in I forgot what country it was. For those of you who have seen the movie, type in the comments, what country were they in? I know they were in Latin America, but nonetheless, he has a very tough job to do, because he has to do an investigation, to go and bust the pimps in the mountains. He's got to watch hours upon hours upon hours of these things, and they even play along with these people to bust high level people, and it's just such an incredible movie. And so, during the movie, actually, Jim Caviezel says, God's children are not for sale. And then at the very end of the movie, you see after the credits, or maybe just before the credits, it gives you like the statistics. And like, just so you know, there are more people enslaved today than there ever has been in the history of mankind. When slavery was legal, if you counted up all those years and you counted up all those people, they don't even come close. You see, human trafficking has become the largest criminal industry in the world. And at the time that I was heavily involved, which began for me in 2011 through, I can't remember the span of, it was maybe like a span of 5 years that I was personally heavily involved. It was the second fastest growing industry next to drug trafficking. Now it has surpassed it, because you can sell kids, you can sell women multiple times a day, right? There's more profit, a lot more profit than just a one-time transaction, selling a drug to someone. But that's probably going to be a repeat customer, but it's a one-time transaction, where with the girl, you can sell her, like I said, in some countries, it's up to 40 times a day. And their lifespan for these women, these girls and women and boys, their lifespan is typically about seven years on average. They either die just from the trauma and the abuse, or they kill themselves, or they get killed. That's very few get away. And so that's a whole other reason why we need to speak up, why we need to become informed, we need to raise awareness. We need to do something. I gave you multiple solutions, various different things that you can do to get plugged in at whatever capacity you can. Share with you different options of what you can do. And I would ask you to pray and ask the Lord, what is my role in all of this? How do I step in and be part of the solution? So as I watched this movie, a couple of things happened. One of them was I was taken back to a few dark times in my life, because like I told you earlier, there's parts of this that I can relate to. And so there was that. But then secondly, when I saw the kids, a scene in the movie when he rescues a large number of children, he had to play along and get these high-level people that wanted to make bukus of money on selling all these kids. They get busted, and he rescues all these kids. And I remember looking at their faces and thinking, seen these kids. I have seen them. I saw their faces in Cambodia. I saw their faces. Not the actors' faces, obviously, but for me, it was a very real experience. I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, I've seen them. I've seen these children. And they're being sold. How can we allow that? How can we be okay with that? If somebody came near my kid, I identify as a mama bear, I would beat you. So it can feel overwhelming. And at one point in the movie, Jim Caviezel tells the guy that he needs to be the investor, right? To finance the whole thing, to buy the high-end hotel and to do all these things. He first tells him about the however many billions of people, and the guy was like, well, I can't do anything about that, and moves on. But then, and I don't want to give away the movie, but then Jim Caviezel makes it personal, and he said, forget the, however many millions or billion. I forget exactly what he was referring to, but he said, like, forget the 50 million. How about the 50 million children that are missing or something? And he gives him a picture of the one girl. He said, just think about the one, just the one. And that changed this guy's perspective and his heart. And he's like, okay, I'm in, I will finance this whole thing. And so I want you to think about the one as well. And now I do also want to say that I recognize that God gives us different burdens, right? I've had to become aware of that too, because for a season I became kind of jaded. I was really frustrated. People would tell me, oh, Lily, that is horrible. Just tell me how I can help. Tell me how I can plug in. Tell me what I can do to help, and I'll do it. And then I would tell them, and they did nothing. Say, hey, you want to be part of this 5K? Do you want to be part of this Walk for Freedom? Or do you just want to finance it? Do you want to be a donor? Do you want to be a sponsor? Do you want to, because I'm trying to raise awareness and to send money to these organizations. Like, I'm doing the legwork. Do you want to show up and participate, or do you want to write a check? Or what do you want to do? Nothing, crickets. And it just drove me up the wall. I'm like, really? You told me, oh, Lily, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And then they would do nothing. So I kind of became jaded after a while. But then I also recognized, you know what? The Lord gives us all different burdens. For some people, they have a burden for the poor. They have a burden for the people that have a lack of clean water, right? And I have witnessed that too. And anyways, so all that to say is that I don't want you to feel obligated or pressured. This isn't like emotional manipulation for you to do something. I just wanted to share my story and ask the Lord, are you part of the solution to some degree, right? Or what burden does he want to place on your heart? What does he want you to be doing to be a light in this world? To bring healing and transformation to people, to introduce people to a God that loves them, that wants to heal them. And there's a lot of different directions we can go with this. You'd be like, well, why would God allow something like this? Listen, God didn't create robots. He gave us free will. Unfortunately, people get hurt when there's free will. The good news is that he is faithful to heal. He's faithful to restore. He's faithful to bring wholeness to those who ask, to those who lean upon him and trust upon him. And last story. So that was my Cambodia story. Radically changed my life. However, how do I know that it happens here in America? I was part of helping a 15-year-old girl here in Dallas. I had some friends that run a different kind of ministry, and they go into high schools and they work with girls, and they ran into a situation they never ran into before. This girl had been trafficked, and this is like a low-income school in a bad part of the Dallas suburbs. And so they contacted me because I didn't know what to do. They just knew I had experience with this. So they brought me in, and we were able to meet with this girl. They were able to get permission from the school to take her out to lunch. and I met with her, heard her story. I'm not going to say her name. I sat across the table from this 15-year-old, which when I met her, she might have just turned 16. When she got trafficked, she was 15. And it was a family friend that trafficked her. Right here in the Dallas suburbs, like southeast Dallas. So, you know, yeah, not a good part of town, that's for sure. But a 15-year-old teenager, an American teenager here in Dallas, trafficked by a family friend, got tricked into going shopping. It was her grandmother's friend who was living with the family. Now, I say grandmother, makes her sound old, but again, this was a 15-year-old, so her grandmother wasn't that old. And yeah, because her parents had been like teenage parents. And anyway, so she had a background. Her parents were both in and out of jail and that kind of thing. So she was raised by her grandmother. But her grandmother had a friend living with them, and that friend invited this young lady, this teenage girl, to go shopping. And what 15-year-old doesn't want to go get new clothes, right? She had developed trust with this lady. She'd been living with them. And this woman takes her to a shopping center here in the Dallas area and asks her to stay in the car. She gets out of the vehicle, meets this other man in the parking lot, gets money from him, sticks it in her purse as she's watching this through the window. And now her heart starts like beating, like, what is happening? The woman takes her into Ross, buys her different kinds of outfits, different themes, different types of outfits, and then drives her to a high-end gated neighborhood in Dallas, goes through the gate. At this point, they drug her. They give her a drink. She's terrified. She's just doing whatever she's told to do. So she drinks this drink, and the next thing you know, she's paralyzed. And she's laying on a bed by the pool as she's watching airplanes, really low airplanes, on their descent. And some obviously on their, you know, taking off. But she primarily spoke of the descending. And so I knew what area she was talking about when she described the shopping center, because she saw everything. And then she got drugged, and then she had no control. They did her change of outfits. They did their things with her, gang things, individual things. They created porn profiles for her. See the connection there? Some of the people you see, yeah, the people who engage in porn, they think that these are people who are doing it out of their own free will. No, they're not. Okay? Not all of them are. Some are being drugged. And so anyways, and trafficked into it. So that happens to her. After they finish doing horrendous things, of course, they verbally begin to abuse her and traumatize her and make threats against her. The lady takes her back, which is interesting. Makes another stop someplace else in Dallas. That person didn't open the door. Oh my gosh, who knows what would have happened there. So takes her back home, but at this point they'd scared her to death. Like, if you open your mouth, this is what's going to happen to you, right? And so she said nothing for months. Maybe, was it up to a year? I don't even remember. Definitely months, until she met the lady that I know. And things began to come up, and she began to say things that gave it away. And that's when my friend contacted me, scheduled this lunch. I meet with this young lady. I get to hear her story. And so they take her back. And I was in contact via that third person, right? Via that other, my friend, who has access to the school, because they go into the schools to do ministry. Now I think they work with like troubled girls, but she was never expecting that. You know, that took her by surprise. So then I contact my connections here in Dallas, and I'm like, hey, here's what I found out. Here's this girl. This is her name. This is what happened. This is her story. What do we do? How do we get her help? Because she's living with the woman who trafficked her, right? And I can't tell you that this story ended very well. Oh, one of the things that the young lady told me was that they tried she was getting text messages from all kinds of people asking for her services, because all of these sites had been created for her, on porn sites, right, had been created with her profile. So she's getting all these text messages from different men And then she said that these pimps that did these things to her had asked her to travel to Oklahoma to one of the casinos, that they were going to take her to a casino and go have fun. Yeah, right. Now, she said, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere with you. I was like, wow, well, that was gutsy. You know, good girl. But after I was connected, after we, you know, this whole thing unfolded and I began to get advice on what to do next, and actually the next step was just going to be to call the human trafficking hotline. I was getting advice on some rescue homes that she could potentially get taken to, but there was something that needed to happen first before they could evaluate if this was going to work, if she could be rescued, right, out of her grandmother's home. Well, unfortunately, we never saw her again or heard of her again. Supposedly she moved schools. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what happened to her. So, go watch the movie. Go watch Tim Ballard's story. It'll do something to your heart. And you're going to hold your kids a lot closer. Not that you become scared and fearful and helicopter parent and all that. Not that. It's just, you just become aware and you realize those kids could be my kids. Right? How can I stay silent? How can I do nothing? When you see this movie, you can't unsee it. And it's not graphic. You're not going to see anything like that. But you're going to see children that need you to speak up. I'm very justice oriented. So I speak up for the ones that can't speak up for themselves, and I hope you will do the same. So become educated, just become aware, become informed, start sharing, start spreading awareness. That doesn't have to take your whole day. If you just took 5 minutes a day, like, or whatever, over the weekend, like instead of watching Netflix tonight, you could say, you know what, I'm going to go to the 821 campaign, or I'm going to go to rescue her, or I'm going to go to, you know, whatever, Tim Ballard's Operation Underground Railroad, or Not for Sale. And I'm going to go and learn about the statistics. I'm going to go and learn about what's going on. And then I'm going to start spreading awareness. And I'm going to tell everybody to go watch this movie. And then you can start asking the Lord, okay, what else can I do? Do you want me to donate to these organizations? Do you want me to volunteer for these organizations? Do you want me to go on a mission? Do you want me to be somebody who goes in and encourages these women? Do you want me to teach them a trade? Whatever. Like, there's so many different ways that you can help. There's so many that I'm not even thinking about right now and sharing with you. So, just do something. Okay? All right. So there you have it. Go watch this movie. Go show Hollywood that this movie matters. Go show them that this movie matters. That this is important. And that's it. God's children are not for sale. Okay. Good night, friends. I'll see y'all later.